Think about your aunts and your grandmothers and your mom that baked for you as you were growing up. Were those bakes perfect and like, patisserie style perfection? No, they weren't. But they were delicious and they meant so much to you on a very sentimental level. And it's exactly the same with our customers. Your baking does not have to be perfect before it will mean something to people. Today we're talking about comparison. Do you struggle with comparison? You are so not alone. On my Instagram stories a while back, I asked how many people struggle with comparison, and it's 94% said that they do. 94%, that's a heck of a lot. Today we're going to get deep into it. Where does it come from? Why is it there? How do you deal with it practically? I'm going to give you very practical steps of how to deal with comparison so that you can actually give it your all in your home bakery and don't constantly feel held back by these feelings of comparison. Hi everyone who's joining live. Thanks for joining me today and for hanging out with me. I'm going to get straight into it. Okay, so the reason why it's so important that we deal with this is because if you don't, it will choke your creativity and your energy and your confidence right out of you. And those things, your confidence, creativity, and what's the other one I said? I can't remember. But your confidence and your creativity specifically are really important in your home bakery business. If you can't be creative, then you're not going to stand out. And your bakes aren't going to be interesting to customers. So you need to tackle comparison head on. Otherwise, your creativity will always be pushed down and subdued by this comparison that keeps going on. Okay, now let's talk about where comparison comes from. First of all, none of us were born this way. None of us, when we are 2 years old, look around at all the other little toddlers and say, well, oh goodness, they can already say 8 more words than I can, so I better pull up my socks and get in gear because I am behind. No toddler thinks that way. We don't care. When we're little, we don't care what other people think about us. We don't care about our progress compared to other people. Where this comes in, where comparison starts coming in, is when we go to school. Now, just a little disclaimer, I am not bashing teachers or bashing school. School is a wonderful thing and I'm very grateful that I got an education. But something that school does, that the modern education system does, because it's based on the Industrial Revolution and producing employees for a job, they intentionally work comparison into the entire school system. Because if you constantly compare your performance to someone else's, then you are going to be a more hardworking employee. You're going to work much harder to try and feel better about yourself compared to your other colleagues. So they intentionally work comparison into our curriculum. It's hectic to put it this way, but that's really what happened. It's not a state secret. You can go look up the foundations of the modern schooling system. This is how it works. Comparison is a fantastic way to produce a hardworking employee. So in school, we were indoctrinated to not just think of ourselves and our own personal performance. We were indoctrinated to think of ourselves in context of other people. So that's where the comparison starts coming in. Your personal best doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. It's about your performance in comparison to someone else's. So it doesn't matter if you reach your personal full potential. You have to be better than Sally, Michael, and Joe before you feel valuable or worthy or significant or interesting or important or whatever. Okay, so that's where comparison comes from. And I want you to know, therefore, that it's not your fault. It's not your fault if you struggle with comparison. As I said, 94% of people struggle with this, at least on my polls. I think on the internet, it's something like between 80 and 90% of people globally struggle with this. So it's not something that's wrong with you specifically and not with anyone else. It's really normal. Okay, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. All these feelings of comparison, it's your responsibility as a business owner to deal with this, because we can't just wait for comparison to magically go away, because that day will never come. We have to deal with it personally. Okay, it's our responsibility to do that. And what I mean by that is we need to change the way we think. We need to change the way we think about ourselves, about our business, and about other people. And this is something that's completely within your power to do. We are not victims of comparison. We have choices every day. We have choices in what we think about. In our minds, there are things that pop up throughout the day. All kinds of thoughts pop into our heads, but they aren't necessarily facts. All right? They aren't necessarily facts. And we can choose what we do with our thoughts. And we can direct them into another direction so that we don't go down a very negative spiral. Okay, I'm going to teach you how to do that, specifically with comparison. Okay, so the first tip I can give you about comparison is that it lives on the power that you give it. If you don't feel comparison in your head, then it can't exist. It sounds very simple, but that's really how it works. Comparison is as real as you make it out to be. So if you choose not to feed it in your mind, then it's going to die very quickly, and then you can just carry on. It's very important to note that this is a choice that we have. We have a choice to make when we deal with comparison every day. We aren't at the mercy of comparison. We have an active choice. You can be an active participant in your thoughts and emotional life, and then you can get amazing results if you shift that. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do when you see another home baker on Instagram, or you're looking at their website, or even on TikTok or wherever, and you see, oh my goodness, their baking looks incredible. It looks amazing. I'm nowhere near that standard. This is such high quality, especially if it's a local baker, then you start thinking, why would anyone order from me if they can just order from this baker? I should just not even try. I should just close my business right now, or not even open it in the first place, and just let everyone go to this baker, because clearly everyone is going to want what they have to offer, not what I have to offer. Instead of going down that line, the moment where you have a choice coming in is just after you saw their baked goods on, let's say you are on Instagram and you see their amazing baked goods on Instagram. Now you have a choice. Either you can go down that intense, negative, disastrous drama spiral that I just explained, or you can shift your thoughts to the facts, which is the following. That person wasn't born this way. They weren't born with all these amazing skills that they have now. If you look back on their Instagram profile, do yourself a favor. Next time you are on Instagram and you see an amazing baker, a local one that you feel intimidated by and you feel like you're inferior to them, then scroll down. Scroll down on their feed right to the beginning where they started. Most people document their entire process. If you are following a home baker that started 7 years ago, you will be able to see the quality of their photos and their baking 7 years ago. And then you will get some perspective. Like this person, oh, look, they started just where I am right now. They started at exactly the same place. They weren't born with all of these amazing skills. They learned them over time. So that shows you what is possible for your business. Isn't that amazing? So when you see someone that's incredibly talented, incredibly successful, tell yourself, you know what? It's amazing. I'm so happy for them because they worked their butts off to get to where they are now. And it shows me what's possible for me in my business. So that should encourage you and excite you and motivate you to keep going, because you see from this person's profile, their account is proof that any skill can be learned, that you can also learn and grow in your photography skills, in your baking skills, in your recipe development skills. So that's how you can look at other bakers online. That is the first step. Immediately when the comparison sets in, tackle it immediately and shift that from, oh, they're so much better than me, no one's going to want my stuff. Shift that to, it's amazing what they've accomplished and it showed me what's possible for me, and that is exciting. Okay, that's a shift that we can make. It's within our power to do that. We have that choice. We don't have to be victims of comparison. Okay, and now the next tip. The most important thing in your business journey is to always, always, always think about your business from your customer's perspective. Their perspective matters more than yours, because they are the ones paying and keeping your business afloat. Okay, but now I'm talking specifically about comparison. Their opinions about your pricing doesn't matter. Okay, that's something different. I'm talking about comparison specifically here. Your customer's opinion of your baking and your business matters more than your own. Your customers don't see your business the same way you do. They don't follow thousands of other bakers on Instagram. They don't. They don't care. They're not obsessed with baking like you and I are. So most home bakers tend to have this idea in their heads that your customer spends like a week or at least an hour every day scrutinizing every home baker in their town or city, and then trying to figure out who's the best one, who's the one who's most worthy of my order. But they don't do that. They don't care. If you can solve a problem in their life, then you are immediately valuable to them. Your baking does not have to be perfect before it will mean something to people. That's a quote that I shared on my profile years ago, like a year ago. And it's so important to know this. I wish I could pin it to the top of my profile. Your baking does not have to be perfect before it will mean something to people. Think about your aunts and your grandmothers and your mom that baked for you as you were growing up. Were those bakes perfect and like, patisserie style perfection? No, they weren't. But they were delicious. And they meant so much to you on a very sentimental level. And it's exactly the same with our customers. Your baking does not have to be perfect before it will mean something to people. Here's another example. Do you know the singer Louis Armstrong? Or some people say Louis Armstrong. Amazing jazz musician. He already passed away, but he was amazing during like the 60s and the 50s. Made many movies, recorded many albums. And he's got such an interesting voice. It's so unique and fascinating. But if you compared him to, let's say, Luciano Pavarotti, who's like one of the best opera singers of all time, if you compared their voices, Pavarotti has the higher quality voice by far. But does that mean there was no space in the world for Louis Armstrong? Of course not. Because he was still, when he, let me put it this way, in his art, in his music, he was completely 100% himself. And that's why he stood out. He stood out, and his excitement about music, his enjoyment of his music was so contagious. If you want to go look up a song of his, one of my favorites, check on Spotify. It's called High Society by Louis Armstrong. Go listen to it. It's so fun. It just makes you smile when you hear his personality coming out in his voice. But I'm just telling you that story to illustrate to you that just because you're not the general best doesn't mean there's no space for you in the world, or that people won't appreciate what you do and won't find value in it and pay for it. That's why everyone's different. Everyone's favorite movie is different. Everyone's favorite singer is different, because everyone has unique tastes. Everyone prefers different things. So give yourself room to be yourself in your home bakery, because there are going to be people who love what you have to offer. Okay. That is so important. Next point. Oh yes, I'm just going to repeat what I wrote down here. Never assume your customers feel about you the way you feel about you. Never assume that your customers feel about you the way you feel about you. Give them the room to have their own opinion about your baked goods. You don't have to assume that because you don't think your baking is impressive, no one will think it is. Or because you wouldn't necessarily pay for your baking, that no one else will want to. That's unfair. You need to give your customers room to make that judgment for themselves. Okay. Next tip. Okay, this is an important one. I want you to, for a moment, picture the goal that you have for your home bakery business. Where do you want to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Picture it. Do you want a storefront? Do you still want to bake at home? What are you going to be baking? Picture what your website looks like, what your photography looks like, what your social media looks like. Do you have staff that you're employing? Envision all of it. What your ideal home bakery setup looks like. What is your dream and your goal for your home bakery? And now I want to ask you, does comparison help you to get to that goal? Or does it actually decrease your chances of reaching that goal? I'm betting that it's the second option, isn't it? Comparison does not help you to reach your goals. Comparison is a toxic luxury that we just can't afford. We don't want to, your time is priceless, right? You are a super busy person, I'm sure of that. We have obligations in our lives, we have family, and we have friends, and we have our home life, and we have, our day jobs and all kinds of things like that. If you are, a part-time baker, or you're doing it as a side hustle, your time is priceless. So you can't waste time on comparison. It's not going to help you to reach your goals. It's not going to help you to make stable income. It's not going to help you to get consistent orders. Comparison is not contributing to your goals. So therefore, it's so important that you make the choice not to indulge in it. It really is something that we indulge in. It's an emotional thing that we just wallow in, but we have the choice to climb out of that. As I said earlier, you can't control what pops up into your head, but then from that point on, you can control which way it's going to go. You can choose to shift your thoughts. You are not at the mercy of comparison. And yes, the important reason why we have to make that choice is because we can't just wait for everyone else to suck before we decide to really give our home bakery business a try and to give it our all. We can't wait for everyone else's lights to dim before we decide to shine. Because if we keep waiting, that day will never come. That day will never come. It's our responsibility to shift our thoughts and deal with comparison. Those thoughts will probably always be there, and that's okay. No one ever said that you have to be completely free of comparison before you can have a successful business. That's so not true. All of my home bakery students that are incredibly successful now, but they also deal with comparison still. They just know that they don't have to pay attention to it. It's just something that comes up. Oh, there's comparison again. Okay, but this is not really supporting me in reaching my dreams and my goals. So I'm just going to cast it aside, and carry on with what I'm doing. So that is something that we can do in our business. It's a choice that we can make. So I hope that this was empowering for you and that you really try this. Remember that your brain is a muscle. Well, in a way, okay, your brain has lots of nerves in it, right? It has all these little paths of how you think. It has all these little roads that it's created over time. Some of them are highways with lots of lights, and your brain very easily travels down that path. For example, brushing your teeth every day. You don't even have to think about it. You just do it. And it's because that action has been indoctrinated into your brain, so therefore you do it automatically. And when you think about something like comparison, if you've been indulging in it, and if you've been going down that negative spiral, totally not judging you, I've done the same thing millions of times, okay? That path is like a highway in your head with loads of lights. It's so easy. Your brain doesn't even have to think twice before it goes down that negative path. So if you wanted to start walking in a different way, you're going to have to train it to do so. And that takes a bit of time. It takes a couple of months. But every single time you choose to shift your thoughts and walk down the practical tips that I gave you now, you start enforcing a new path. And over time, that will become your brain's default. It's so worth it to invest your energy in this, because down the line, it's going to be so quick for you then to deal with comparison so that it doesn't waste your time and it doesn't hold you back, and you get where you want to go a lot faster and reach the success a lot faster, get consistent orders faster, and get a stable income faster. Okay, cool. Thanks for being here, guys. I'm so glad this was helpful. Save this video so that you can watch it again. Also share it with a baking friend that you know also struggles with comparison. And of course, the cat has to always crash my Instagram live. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great day further, and we'll chat soon. Bye.